Next we have one more JVM component in our JVM. What it is? Execution engine. We will discuss briefly about execution engine. Execution engine. So what this execution engine is doing in our JVM? This execution engine is one of the components of our JVM. It is responsible to execute our Java bytecode. In our Java, all executions happening in JVM are controlled by this execution engine, and it uses interpreter and Git compiler for executing a program. This interpreter and Git compiler just reveal what we have discussed in our hotspot client virtual machine and hotspot server virtual machine. There we have discussed about Git compiler. So our server virtual machine uses Git compiler. I have discussed with you. Here in execution engine, this JVM component, which is execution engine, will use our interpreter and Git compiler for executing a program. And this execution engine will also contain garbage collector because it should destroy the unreferenced objects from heap area. The objects which are not using by any class or any method, those are unreferenced objects. Those objects are not used by anyone. So this execution engine should destroy that unreferenced object from heap area. That's the reason it uses garbage collector to destroy the objects from heap area. So we will discuss about all these points. And also our execution engine is having profiler and security manager for executing a Java program. These are nothing but it helps our JVM component to execute our Java bytecode with security, and it gives great performance. It will increase the performance of program execution. We will make a note about all these points. Just assume that this is our execution engine. This is my execution engine. So this execution engine uses what it uses to execute our bytecode. It uses interpreter. And also it uses Git compiler to execute our Java class bytecode. Our execution engine will use all these components, and it will use hotspot profiler. And also this execution engine is having security manager. and garbage collector. These are the internal components of our execution engine. This interpreter, Git compiler, hotspot profiler, security manager, and garbage collector will take care of executing our Java class bytecode from our execution engine. And it uses garbage collector for destroying these unreferenced objects from heap area. Just now we have discussed this. So to execute in simplest kind of nature, like we have discussed it in our client virtual machine and server virtual machine, right? There, for in client virtual machine, it will use interpreter to execute our Java code. When we give a command with Java example, then it will use interpreter to execute our Java code, our Java bytecode. If I use Java server virtual machine, then it will use JIT compiler, just-in-time compiler, to execute my Java bytecode. It is another kind of execution engine and it is faster but requires more memory. All this point we have discussed in our client virtual machine and server virtual machine. This just-in-time compiler will increase the performance of our program execution. But this JIT compiler will find the code which is executed repeatedly and it generates machine language for this code. And this Git compiler will find the code which is executed repeatedly and this generates machine language for that code only once, and it will buffer it and it reuses the same machine language code for repeated execution in our just-in-time compiler. This is how JIT compiler will give high performance in executions, because it is like it will take whatever the code which is repeatedly executing, it will take it and it will generate machine language for that code only once and it will reuse the same code for repeated execution. That's the reason our Git compiler will give high performance. This is about execution engine. So whatever the points we have discussed, I will make a note about that so you will not forget all those points. It is one of the JVM components. It is responsible to execute Java bytecode. And all executions happening in JVM are controlled by this execution engine. And it uses interpreter, comma, just-in-time compiler, comma, profiler, comma, security manager for executing a program. and also execution engine will also contains garbage collector for destroying unreferenced objects from heap area. So we have discussed some more points. Our execution engine will come in two implementations. What are those? The simplest kind of execution engine is just with interpreter, and it just interprets the bytecode one at a time. And next we have another kind of execution engine is a just-in-time compiler. It is faster but requires more memory. And we have discussed our Git compiler will increase the performance of program execution. And we have discussed this Git compiler will find the code which is executed repeatedly then it generates machine language for that code only once. Then it will buffer it and reuses. It will buffer it and reuses the same machine language code for repeated execution. That's the reason this is how our Git compiler will give high performance in execution. So these are the points about execution engine. I have explained you with architecture, diagram, and with all these points. So this is about our JVM architecture internals. All the internals, everything, every topic I have explained you from very scratch level in depth. These are the internal structure. This is the internal process which is happening when we execute our class in our Java.